Retro Hangover, supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We would especially like to thank patrons Lyle McCarnes, Randall Quiggle, Tony G, Studstill Smash the Milkman, Tom the Superhero, Raging Demon, Mass Keaton, Lucas from Game Over Hell, Ozzy Garcia, JC, Megan Caruso, Lunchbox, aka the Disgruntled Gamer, Rick Firestone, Dave Jackson, Jenny E, Retro Overdrive, Soha, the Emperor, Storm Beagle, Matt, aka Stormageddon, B. Ross and Van Fernal from Super Garbage Day, Keith Gasper, the Retro Vixen, Eric Guess, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands podcast, Ash Event, Alan Bingham, Mike the Ref from Backbreaker Gaming, Ryan, Player One, Low 5 Alex, Alt, Renner Dreaming, Omi, and Makeshift Money. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated. Welcome to the Gorp Flight, a consumable curation of champions, not so much catastrophes, that is considerate of your chronometer. It's me, Chris, as part of the Retro Hangovers flight, and we are here to give you our Game of the Years. Games of the Year.
Yes.
For 2024. Yeah, Game of the Years. That's technically King of Games. But yeah, we're here to give you that. And with me, as always, is your host, Shane, best polished Dick Dragon Celtaire. How are you doing, Shane?
I'm doing pretty good. We're despite definitely catching a head cold from all of the family visiting for the holidays. I'm hanging in there. I think at least personally, 2025, I think is looking up. I mean, the rest of the world is still going to be on fire, so that's cool. But
it's fine.
Overall, not too bad. I'm looking forward to our schedule of games for this upcoming year, because I think I do believe we have outdone ourselves this time.
Yeah, we definitely got some good ones, some popular ones, and everything like that, everything in between. So I think it's going to be a really good year. We've had some good games already this year so far. Well, we've talked about Gangster Town and Vi. Well, I hope you think Vi is good. I like Vi. That episode's already out, so you can go listen to that. We haven't talked about it in real time, but what we are about to talk about here is what are our top 5 games from 2024. Now, these games could be released in any year. These games don't have to be released in 2024. And I don't know what Shane's rules are on this, but I'm going to be going first on this one. And let me just explain my personal rules and how I can decide what the game of the year is. First of all, I had to beat the game. If I did not beat the game, I'm not putting it on my top 5 list, because if I really liked it, why wouldn't I beat it? So that's one rule. 2, if it's the first year I beat a game, I tend to include it. And 3, if I beat the game before, but it was like 20 plus years ago, I also include it, because I view it as a fresh experience. And like that way it kind of renews the way I feel about a game, as opposed to really just riding on my previous reputation with it, which I kind of discussed with Donkey Kong Country in our previous flight. Donkey Kong Country 2 specifically. So anyway, let me start with my number 5.
Number 5.
My number 5 for 2024 is Garou, Mark of the Wolves, for the Neo Geo, Dreamcast, Steam, whatever. It's the SNK fighter. It's part of our RHRC review crew game of the month. I nominated this game. I was looking forward to playing it. I think I gave it either a 9.5, or I may have given it a 10. Uh, you might be wondering why it's not higher up with a rating like that. It's just because, you know, I had my time with it and I moved on. But while I was playing it, I found it to be just a brilliant fighting game. One of the best 2D fighters I've ever played, and especially in terms of its artistic design, just very, very fluid. One of the most visually gorgeous examples of pixel art, especially from the late 90s, early 2000s. Uh, Definitely found this game to be highly entertaining. So yeah, my number 5 is going to be Garou: Mark of the Wolves.
All right. Well, rolling right into it. I guess my rules are fairly similar to yours. Although I did not, I didn't have like a time frame sort of thing like you did, like for super old games. Mine just kind of worked out to be like either ones that were brand new to me in 2024, or games that had a significant enough change, like a an official 1.0 release or like an expansion or something like that that would shift it
Yeah.
enough to that it would qualify as like a new experience. So so my number 5 is PT. I have been wanting to play that game forever. I've seen playthroughs of it on YouTube and things like that, but I never had the opportunity to play it myself. And so when we talked about it for our Spooktoberfest this past year, I was really excited to finally sit down and play it. And fortunately, I'm lucky enough to have Chris here, who has PT still sitting on his PlayStation. So I was able to experience it as God intended. And it's pretty good. I mean, the ending is a little frustrating just because of how fucking obtuse it was, but it was kind of almost everything I would want in like a really good horror game experience. And what they managed to do with essentially a hallway is really impressive. They did so much with so little there. And I like many others continue to lament what could have been with Silent Hills. I think the names associated with that could have made something truly great, and it's a bummer that we will probably never see that come to light. But the other end of it is you kind of have to think, like, with such a succinct experience, like how would you break that out into a like 20 or 30 hour game or whatever, so we'll never know. But yeah, I'm starting off my list with that because I was just really excited to finally sit down and play it. And as a horror buff myself, I did thoroughly enjoy the experience. So
Number 4.
My number 4 is Cyber Speedway for the Sega Saturn. Is this a perfect game? Oh, no, it's not a perfect game. But it did surprise me. It surprised me quite a bit in terms of it's like a Wipeout clone, but I think it came out before Wipeout, or like an F-Zero clone, I guess would make it more accurate. Even though the only F-Zero game that came out before that was F-Zero, like on the Super Nintendo. There was no F-Zero X yet. And I think it's technically a spiritual sequel or a direct sequel to another game on PC. Either way, it's a really good looking game for a 1995 Saturn release, maybe 1994 in Japan even. It's bright, it's colorful, it has a really good soundtrack, it controls well. The worst part about the game, honestly, is the in between like voiceover scenes, which, by the way, are not one of those so bad it's good. They're just bad and weird and awkward. But like the racing itself is really good. The Japanese plot replaced a lot. Of course it did. Like in the Japanese original, you're supposed to be racing cars or hovercraft or whatever it is across the galaxy in order to save your girlfriend. And in this one, it just seems to be you want to win money in the American version.
I like the money.
I don't know. Yeah, don't pay attention to the plot. The plot's stupid. The racing is great. Definitely get in for the racing. It exceeded my expectations. It probably will do the same with yours. And like the tracks change depending on the difficulty level as well, which I was not expecting. Like they have their own circuit, and they're not like the same tracks if I recall. Like they're slightly different. So there's a host of little surprises. Definitely go check out the OST if you're a fan of music from that era of video game soundtracks, CD, like Red Book audio types. The Japanese one in particular, the American one, it has music that was made by a band that Sega developed themselves called Bygone Dogs. They've been in a couple of Saturn games, but yeah, they're an in-house band for Sega that they just created, and they're not terrible.
Alrighty. So my number 4 is something that was a little bit of a resurrection of an IP, and I say that just because like lately, and lately is like, to me, that's that the term lately or the other day as I get older just continues to grow in what it could possibly cover. So, you know, lately is like, let's say the last 5 to 10 years. But anyway, not great. A lot of not great. And actually I played, before this came out, I played the most recent release in this particular franchise on stream, and it was fucking terrible. And that is Contra. Operation Galaga is my number 4 because it is in many ways a true return to form for the Contra series, and it is just fun. It reminds me a lot of the sort of the heyday with like Contra 3 or like hardcore or like things like that. And it's just really well done. And I generally speaking, I'm a pretty big fan of Way Forward. I think they do a lot of good work. And this is another one. And I was just very pleasantly surprised because Contra, like other IPs that are near and dear to me, like Silent Hill, for example, have really gotten beaten up over the last like 10 or 20 years. There's just a lot of shit, and it's a lot of let's abuse this IP because people know it and love it and release cash grab garbage or just real low effort content. And it's supremely disappointing. So to get something like Operation Galaga to come out, I was very happy. It's a lot of fun to play. It has a lot of really great like nods and homages to previous Contra games, both in the levels themselves, in the upgrades that you can purchase in between your gameplay sessions to kind of like boost your characters. The characters themselves, you get a selection of at least, I think it's like 6 to 8 characters that sort of span different Contra games, even the Probotectors for those European folks among us. And yeah, it was just, it's a really nice little package. And I'm really happy to have a Contra title that I can play and unironically say that I enjoy. So that is why it is my number 4.
Number 3.
My number 3 is definitely a game that I was shocked by. I did not expect this game to be good at all. And it was a free game. It was released as a April Fool's Day joke from Sega in 2003 for free. And I think it still is free. I think you can still go on Steam and get this game for free. And I had an absolute blast with it. And it is The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. It's so delightful. It's so charming. I loved it. Again, this is one of those games that if you're looking for depth, if you're looking for a game to challenge you mentally, if you're looking for a game to like spend days and days and days trying to figure out that you can be proud that you accomplished, this is not that game. This is just a game that put a smile on my face the entire time with all the characters from the Sonic universe doing stupid Sonic shit. It was perfect. I'm starting to find that I'm probably a Sonic mega fan. I think I've said this before. I'm a closeted Sonic mega fan, except I'm like screaming outside of the closet, letting everyone know I'm not in there. But it's, I don't know, man. Like, gameplay's good. It's, what is it? I would call it a adventure game, point and click adventure game for the most part. Then it has some action sequences, which are okay. But I don't know, man. It was such a joy. I didn't expect it to have that level of polish and quality and care and dedication. You could tell that the team that made this game like loved working on it. There's no reason this game should be free. There's no reason it should have been a joke release. This could have been its own complete release. They could have charged money for this, but they didn't. So I think even like the cost value on top of the amount of enjoyment I had. Yeah, the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog is an easy 3 spot for 2024, and I even forgot that I played it this year. That's how long this year kind of went on for me at times. But yeah, really happy that I played this game.
Nice. So my number 3 kind of came out of nowhere for me. I didn't really know about it at all, and then I was kind of looking for things to play on stream for our Spooptober Fest, as we are wont to do every year, and it's Pumpkin Jack. The game was a lot of fun.
Oh,
I really enjoyed my time with it. It did a really great job of nailing that like 3D platformer sort of gameplay feel and aesthetic from, like the late 90s to like early aughts. Like but with, I think proper quality of life improvements. And as sad as this is to say, one of the things that I was pleasantly surprised by was the fact that you could unlock all of the alternate costumes for Pumpkin Jack with purely in-game collectible currency and not microtransactions, because that's where we are now in the state of gaming. And it was nice to see that for once. But yeah, it's just a really satisfying game. I wouldn't call it a collect-a-thon, because that goes into like Donkey Kong territory that I don't want to touch. But I think it had enough of it to be satisfying. Like there was just really like there was like 2 collectibles that you could get in every level, and there was only, I think, 10 or 12 of the little skulls, and there was one gramophone that was hidden somewhere in the level, and that was it. So I think it was just the right amount to be like, oh, that's a cool thing for me to collect, and you'd use those to buy those outfits. And they were never anything that was like so hidden that it was frustrating. Like they were, I actually think the level design was extremely well done. It was very satisfying to play. The gameplay felt real good. And the story was amusing. It had just the right amount of like sort of tongue-in-cheek humor without being like Borderlands cringy. So yeah, overall a surprise, but a much welcomed one.
Number 2.
My number 2 might be a bit controversial for fans of this show, considering that we reviewed this game technically on our main feed probably about 5-6 years ago now. At that point, it's been a while. But I did beat this game for the first time this year. Like, no cheats, no nothing. Legitimately went all the way through. I never beat it before either. I always made it very close. And then I just kind of put it down. And I was like, yeah, I had a good time with it, but I can't beat it. I'm not good enough. And I don't want to dedicate all the time to do it. Well, this year I went into this game and it's like, I'm going to do this because I was having fun. I'm like, I'm going to beat it. And I finally did. And now I can put this on my list. Might be cheating a little bit, but my number 2 game is Panzer Dragoon. And I finally learned all of the intricacies that I needed to and got like really good at it. And just finally, I think I finally realized, like I did say it was good back in our episode when we talked about it. I did say I really liked it. I did say it held up. But the game today when I played it, like it felt fresh. And it felt like I was like having a much better time with it this time. Like I truly understood why Panzer Dragoon was a great game. It was a great rail shooter in a lot of ways I hadn't really understood before. Like everything just kind of clicked. And that entire experience, just the soundtrack being as good as it is, the graphical design for a launch Saturn game being as good as it is, and the controls being so tight, moving exactly the way you want to once you understand how your crosshair works in relation to your dragon. And I know something I bitched about with Donkey Kong Country 2. Like it's a memorization game eventually to know where the enemies are. But I think like you can, if you have your wits about you and your skills, because this at the end of the day, it's a rail shooter. It's a shooting game. where that is expected. That kind of gameplay is expected. I think it does it in such a way that's inviting and accessible and encourages you to keep on trying, with Shane's favorite way of encouraging people to play by giving you more continues the better that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you make it through. So yeah, Panzer Goon is my number 2 game of the year. I loved every second that I played with it this year, and I can't wait to get to 2 eventually as part of IO Saturnalia, even though that's going to be probably a few decades at this rate. But yeah, Panzer Goon.
All right, folks, we're going to get into completely unsurprising territory now. So my number 2 is Diablo 4, Vessel of Hatred. Blizzard done did a blizzard, just as I expected that they would, because they've got a track record for this now, of basically fixing all the shit they did wrong with the initial release of a game with the expansion. And I feel like, oddly enough, this is a very almost Diablo-specific problem, now that I think about it, because every Diablo game, with the exception of the first one, because there wasn't an official expansion for that, this is their MO. Like, not that the initial game is bad, it's just that there are a lot of problems. Diablo 2 had this as well, even though people like to pretend it didn't. And Diablo 3 absolutely did, with things like the real money auction house and the weird difficulty balancing and et cetera, et cetera. And then Diablo 4 also had its share of issues upon release, and they were kind of trying to find their groove, I think, find their footing. And then Vessel of Hatred came out, and I'm not saying it was a silver bullet. I mean, Diablo 4 still has some minor issues, but if you step outside of like the complainer echo chambers of like the subreddits and forums and whatever, by all accounts, people are generally really enjoying the game, and myself included. So I think Vessel of Hatred was a huge win for Diablo 4. It was a game that I wanted to like all along, and I did for the most part, but I couldn't ignore some of the major issues that they had, and I think the expansion rectified a lot of that. The loot overhaul was huge, and I think the gameplay additions are very welcomed. And it is genuinely a fun time to play. And so I am happy that my favorite franchise of all time is doing well. And so that is why it is my number 2, because I think it breathed a lot of much needed new life into Diablo 4 this year.
Still need to play Diablo 4 and 3. I haven't played either of them. That's probably not something I'm going to be addressing anytime soon. What I will be addressing is my number 1 pick, my game of the year.
Number 1.
Now, unfortunately, I have not played East 10 this year. I haven't started it yet. I own it. I'm ready to play it whenever I have the time to do it. But that means that we cannot have a three-peat of East games. So sorry, cannot keep the tradition going. It is broken. Might have to. It's going to have to be next year. But that means I have a new series to pick as my number 1 pick, my game of the year, and I'll say that it is a game that I had beaten before in the past, but it has been a very long time since I played it. And as soon as I started playing it again for an episode on our show, I just realized I am home. I am so happy here. I am having such a good time, and I couldn't stop playing it. And I 100%ed the game, even though the ISO that was on my system that would have allowed me to play it because it was on the Dreamcast screwed up the opening to it. I still got everything, and that game is Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur is my game of the year. I don't think I have 100%ed a single game this year outside of that. I got all the characters, completed all the missions, I got all the unlockables, everything. I have 100. I got the screen, the special screen, which I think is the second best screen personally in that game. But like I could not stop playing that game. And this is a game that if you want to say you've beaten it, all you got to do is just, play it for about 2.5 minutes, and there you are, you're done. But I think I plugged in about 9 or 10 hours into it. Just constantly going through the mission mode, getting the best score I could, making sure all the missions were defeated and unlocking all the art. And man, I just had a blast. I had an absolute blast. No, didn't play two player at all, but I don't feel like that's a game that you necessarily have to in order to have a good time. It's that good of a fighting game. And the fact that it's one of those fighting games that is just incredibly accessible, and it can make anyone feel like an absolute badass, no matter what character you have. It's not like it's not a button masher per se, but button mashers will have a great time with it, which makes it a special game. Also, like for a game made in 1999, that game still looks fucking incredible. Yeah, you can tell the difference between like that and today, but it's held up. It has held up magnificently. So my number one game of the year, why my number one game of the year? It is my game of the year, and that is Soul Calibur for the Sega Dreamcast.
Yeah, you fighting game fans are a totally different breed. I don't understand how you can put so much time into those games. I am definitely just like 15 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, all right, I got the idea. I'm good.
I mean, the same way that you can spend hours just clicking the left button over and over and over again.
That touche. Speaking of which, my number one game of 2024 is Halls of Torment. It is it came out as official 1.0 release, I believe, this year, which is why I'm including it in this list. And man, this is, I think, the best Vampire Survivor like that I have come across, and there are a number of reasons for that. One is purely personal for me, because this game unabashedly is trying to be what if Vampire Survivor, but also Diablo 1. So that's already like basically laser targeted to me. Like I am the demographic, but it's also just really well done. Like the game, I've played a lot of Survivor likes ever since it came out, because there was this gold rush of that. You know, it's the same thing with like Flappy Bird or like any other game that hits it big. Everybody wants to try to do the same thing, and so there are so many of them out there, and I've played quite a few, ranging in quality. There are a lot of pretty decent ones out there, but I think this one takes the cake for me, because not only does it really nail that like pixelated isometric but very like brooding and ominous style that Diablo 1 pulled off so well, but the gameplay itself is just so tight. It's so well done. You get all of the normal trappings of a bullet heaven game, as I think these have sort of come to be called now. But the progression that is built into it is supremely satisfying. It's not obtuse, which is one of the main complaints that I have with Vampire Survivors. Everything is fairly straightforward. You have a list of unlockables that you get by achieving certain things. So you always have something to be working towards, and you know what you need to do in order to unlock that. There are secrets, like there are puzzles. There's one major puzzle in every level of the game, but they do an excellent job of guiding you towards the solution without holding your hand. Usually it's in the manner of, again, much like Diablo 1, this just ominous tome just sitting in the middle of, the space that you're in, and you go and read it, and it gives you this, voiceover. It basically gives you like a hint of what it is you're supposed to do in the level. And those are also very satisfying to solve, and those will unlock more things for you. And there's like something like 10, I think it's like 8 or 10 different characters you can play as, and all of them are unique in their own way. They all have very specific attacks that they have. They rely on different stats. So you can basically customize your equipment loadouts and save them on a per character basis, which is the other thing. Gaining equipment, you find it randomly by defeating, like elite monsters or bosses in the levels. And then there's a well that you can find in every level that you can send an item back up to the surface, and you can only do that a limited number of times per run, which then unlocks that piece of gear for you to use in a loadout for future runs for your characters. And God, the gameplay loop is so fucking good. Like, it's so good. They really knocked it out of the park, and I am thoroughly impressed with it. I am still playing it now, even though I've basically done just about everything there is to do in the game, but it's just fun to play. So I just keep coming back to it. I'm really looking forward to hopefully either a Halls of Torment 2, or maybe some DLC or an expansion or something, because this is one of those games that I would definitely want more of. So that is why it is my number one of the year.
Hell yes. And I've seen you play Halls of Torment multiple times on stream, and you are always having a good time. So it tracks.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good one. So, but there you go. That's it. We are officially capping off the year 2024 with our best games. We're ending on a perhaps uncharacteristically positive note, although we're kind of making this a regular thing now, I think. So, the Gorpies have become, or will soon become, an institution of the show. Mm-hmm. So I feel like obviously the next step is we just need to start getting Gorpies like 3D printed or something and just like sending them to game developers. That's clearly the next step. They'll just be like, what the fuck is this? But
make it like a slimy phallic shaped dragon. Something, remember the thing that Ash event sends you. That's the Gorpy. We need to make that one.
Yeah, we could workshop that a little bit, but yeah, maybe something along those lines, sure.
Who doesn't like the gift of love?
Yeah. Yes, who doesn't like a rainbow colored 3D printed veiny phallus showing up on your doorstep?
Put it on your fireplace.
Display it proudly.
It's a conversation starter.
That absolutely could be the first and last conversation with that particular person, but it'll definitely start one.
Do you really want to hang out with them then?
I mean, that's true. That's true. Maybe it'll act as a litmus test for the people in your life.
Exactly. I 100% agree.
Oh man. Well, I guess with all that being said, if you don't know, it'd be strange, I think, for somebody to jump in on our like best of the year thing, but maybe you just wanted to hear the highlights. Who knows? But if this is your first episode, then hey, thanks for joining us. We're glad that you're here, and you can check out all our other stuff in one convenient spot. Just head over to our Linktree. So go to linktr.ee/retrohangover, and all the goodies are right there for you. Chris, is there anything that you would like to say before we wrap the year and move on to 2025 and whatever that might bring for us?
Yeah. Come to our Discord. Come be part of RHRC, and thank you to all our wonderful patrons and community members that are making the show possible as we roll into 2025. I know it's January. We've been there for a while, so thank you. And just thanks for being aboard this crazy ride. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you, everybody.
That's right, keeping this train wreck afloat. I feel like that should be a t-shirt.
Exactly. Yes. We need new t-shirts. We need new blood.
That's true, we do. All right, well, capitalism aside, with all of that now having been said, until the next Gorpies,
play with your best of the best stiff joysticks.